adjourn. Yeah. Good evening. Welcome to the regular meeting of Brisbane Planning Commission. Today is Thursday.
It's on. The light's on anyway.
Mic on? Mic on?
It's not on yet?
No.
Not on yet.
You just said that it was on, so.
Now it goes.
Okay. Welcome to the regular meeting of Brisbane Planning Commission. Today is Thursday, May 25th, 2017, 7:30 p.m. Before we start the meeting, what I like to do is just let the people watching at home and the audience that we have here, I like to remind them that there is one way you can see these proceedings on cable channel as well as on streaming on the brisbaneca.org/live-streaming. With that, call to order, please.
Commissioner Anderson?
Present.
Commissioner Cunningham?
Present.
Commissioner Mackin?
Present.
Commissioner Minier?
I'm here. Adoption of agenda. Anybody has any changes, comments, or anything?
I have no changes.
None.
Okay. So we proceed on to the consent calendar. There is nothing on that item tonight. And the oral communication, we have large audience tonight, so I extend time limits from 15 minutes to 30 minutes if anybody wants to come and talk before the commission tonight.
It'll give them time to get down here.
Yeah. See no one here. We go to the written communication. I think we got a bunch of stuff to here. Some of it was attached to the package. The other one was given to me this afternoon by Ken. So number one is the proposal to initiate revisions to Planning Commission procedures to align with current practice. All of you have this now?
Yes.
Okay. And the next one was PD plan development permits, and that was also attached with a whole bunch of stuff from our city attorney, Michael H. Rouge. All of you have that? Okay.
Yes.
And there is another report. This is regarding the toxicity study that did at the Levinson property, Department of Toxic Substance Control, and there's a big report on that. I'm sure you all have a chance to review that. Mm-hmm. Okay. Then we move on to the tonight agenda. The item G is a study session, Northwest Bayshore General Plan Designation and Zoning. This is the continuation of discussion we had about a month ago, discussion on potential general plan and zoning consistency amendments. Staff report, please.
Yes, thank you. On April 13th, the Planning Commission held a public hearing and considered the general plan and zoning amendment cases related to the Northwest Bayshore subarea. These amendments are aimed at achieving consistency between the general plan and zoning. There are three main recommendations that were presented in that public hearing. First was to incorporate the Brisbane Technology Park into the Crocker Park subarea and rezone the property to TC1. That's the south end of the subarea. Second was to retain the Northwest Bayshore subarea name for the PG&E Martin substation site and 7 Mile House, but to create a new implementing zoning district specific to that area to better reflect the existing and anticipated uses there. And third was to create a new general plan subarea, what we named Guadalupe Hills, over the vacant central portion of the existing Northwest Bayshore subarea. The area is primarily comprised of the Levinson and Peking handicraft properties. At the hearing in April, a number of issues were raised, and the Planning Commission continued the public hearing to a date to be determined, so that would be renoticed. The Planning Commission also suggested another study session be scheduled to further address the issues that were raised, which is why we're here tonight. The Commission was generally supportive of the overall concept of addressing the three distinct portions of the sub-area differently, as I just outlined, but there were a number of questions mostly related to the proposed Guadalupe Hills area. Also, the Commission expressed its desire to retain historical references in the general plan. The issues that were raised regarding Guadalupe Hills were questions regarding potential contamination from a historic gasification plant and the impact on the Marsh and Levinson properties. Second was allowing for residential uses, and then third was the appropriate permitting process requirements for the new development that might go there. First, regarding the concerns that were raised about contamination related to historical uses nearby, staff provided summary information from DTSC's website, and in brief, Midway Village has an operation and maintenance plan in place to address subsurface contamination. There is a letter on file from DTSC indicating no further action was required on the Levinson site, although the Midway Village is an ongoing issue. As noted in staff's memo, any specific plan, proposal, or other discretionary application for development would require environmental review pursuant to CEQA, and site-specific issues pertaining to hazardous materials and potential contamination would be addressed and at that time and be subject to the public's and the Commission's review through the CEQA process. Next, regarding the potential for mixed-use development, as a reminder, the general plan currently identifies housing as a potential allowable use within the sub-area, but it doesn't establish density or intensity parameters for such a residential component. Staff has recommended that housing either be deleted as a potential permitted use or that some basic density and intensity parameters should be established. And in the event that you want to continue that residential use in the general plan. It was suggested at the public hearing that the current language regarding mixed use allows for flexibility there, but staff did not hear a decisive direction yet from the Commission, so that would be something up for discussion. Finally, regarding potential development permitting requirements, the current general plan and zoning require both a specific plan and discretionary plan development permit, as we've discussed previously. And the Commission had requested a written opinion from the city attorney, which Chair Munir acknowledged in the opening. And so that's basically addresses whether the plan development permit is subject to referendum, like the specific plan, it in fact is not. So that you have that opinion. Staff has also prepared a couple of tables that you have that were not included in the package, but on the dais there, that outline the approval process and differences between a plan development and specific plan. And as we've indicated before, we feel that the two types of permits are redundant and serve the same essential purpose and function. However, as we previously stated, the Commission retains the option of maintaining those existing requirements for both a specific plan and a PD permit. And finally, staff has revised the draft of the general plan amendments as a preliminary for your review. And if you have any specific comments on that, we'd be happy to take those before we bring this back for public hearing.
Any comments or questions for the staff report? Go ahead.
I have a question.
in the red line text. Is that what you were talking about, Ken, going over?
Right. If you have any comments or questions on any.
I do have a question.
Sure.
I'm on page 16. Under the Northwest Bayshore.
Mm-hmm.
The very last paragraph, the very last sentence says debris flows were experienced in portions.
Right? For the one he did.
That was happening on Tuesday as well.
Yeah.
I don't know what the was. I don't know. We didn't
Huh.
figure. I don't.
Didn't figure it out then?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we
All right.
apologize in advance for this.
It's probably a negative feedback from
Right.
their station of some sort.
Seems to be.
Yeah, strange. Anyway,
Say again.
So the last
Go ahead.
sentence
Mhm.
says debris flows were experienced in portions of the sub-area during the 1982 storm. When I go to the next page, 17, the same sentence is included in the second to the last paragraph. Was that an oversight, or should it really be included in both paragraphs?
I have, in order not to lose anything, I've included it in both purposefully. I'm assuming those debris, and I don't have the details on that history, and I think finding that would be quite an effort. But I'm assuming that the debris flow probably went through the marsh area, which is right on the border between the two sub-areas. So I'm assuming it spilled over to both sub-areas and left it in.
I think that's wise then to leave that in.
You know, I did read that somewhere, and I don't remember where I read it, but I do remember reading exactly what you said somewhere, sometime recently. So,
May I ask another question?
Sure.
The chair permits. On page 17, Guadalupe Hills, I'm down paragraph number 4. Last sentence of that paragraph. City approved an open space plan in 2001 which provides mapping of areas along the western side of the sub-area with, keyword here, potential endangered butterfly habitat and proposed open space. When I look at the previous page 16, paragraph 2, it says that the sub-area, this is old text to be omitted, that the areas fall within the boundaries of the Habitat Conservation Plan. So I found potential and falling within the boundaries. Am I misreading, or is that?
It is within the boundaries of the Habitat Conservation Plan. The potential, and actually we could delete the word potential, but potential is more, I think, referring to open space, that there would be open space in part of that. And there is, in the past, there haven't been recent studies that I know of, but in the past there was documentation of butterfly habitat in that area, and so that's why they set that aside. And so I think that's a good catch, and we'll delete potential, because I think the word proposed at the end of that sentence covers what, because we don't know what the open space will be. But
And where it says proposed open space, under the current designation with PD, it specifies 25% open space. So when I read proposed open space, that's kind of nebulous. Is there some way we could also just change that a little bit to reflect?
I think there may be two different things going on. One, I think Ken's intent here was to capture the language from the 2001 open space plan, which didn't get into the percentage from the PD requirements. So that 25% sort of issue isn't really related to the open space plan. So we'd be kind of mixing what the open space plan says versus a requirement elsewhere in the general plan. I don't know if that's could be more confusing as opposed to clarifying if it's not really accurate, reflecting what the open space plan.
No, I appreciate that. Then it makes sense now. So the only thing would be that potential. Everything else is
we'll
good.
scratch that.
Thank you.
Commissioner Anderson?
I have no comments.
No comments? Okay. Commissioner Cunningham?
I have no comments right now.
Okay. The comments I have regarding Guadalupe sub-area is there was a discussion about the mixed use and housing along the edge of the Bay Shore. Now, the current current subdivision does allow that, right?
So the language regarding mixed use is left in here, and I'll find the page here in a minute, but I believe I actually highlighted that. I didn't take it out, but I just highlighted it as a topic for your discussion, but I've
Page
left that in.
26.
Page 26.
The yellow.
Okay.
May
Yeah.
I, if I may?
Go ahead.
I think part of that is harkens back to when we were trying to figure out where
Yes.
housing should be, and we eliminated that area as potential for housing.
Yeah.
I think that's where this comes in, right?
But the
In the
question-
past?
Right. So through the housing element, this sub-area was left out. Essentially, it came up in the last two cycles of the housing element and was left out. And that fact combined with the fact that there's not any density numbers attributed to a mixed use leaves it kind of as potentially misleading for developers that might seek to do housing there, and the city's like, well, we didn't really include that in the housing element. And so as we mentioned in the staff report, if this is if the commission's desire is to retain the housing in the language here, that we'd suggest that be revisited with the next review of the land use element as a whole, or with the next housing element cycle, whichever comes first. So,
Well, I'm of the opinion that I think this particular site, we already experienced such a heavy traffic flows and all that, and also we have not defined the areas where we can have the mixed use, along the Bay Shore or where, and we don't want to give an open-ended sentence here saying that you can have a mixed use where it could be in the middle of the the corridor for the butterflies. So I'm of the opinion that we should take it out at this point, the residential element of that. Number one, the other reason I'm saying this is because the open space, I know it will be difficult to get the funding to get that assigned as an open space, but at least if you leave it as an open space, then we have the option to apply for the grants. Once we say that we're going to have the housing over there, and we will limit the open space to that certain areas within the Levinson property, then we will not have any leverage in terms of getting any kind of money.
I just want to clarify that, again, if you take out the housing reference or not, that's your prerogative. We have our reasons why we think that's a good idea. But either way, that area would still provide for other kind of uses, not just open space. And again, there's a lot of legal implications of imposing a open space designation on privately owned property that the city attorney would, I suspect, be very concerned if the city were to just designate that entire sub area as open space. So I'd caution you against that. I think the point was, both through the original concept and the 2001 open space plan, was that any development concept, subsequent development concept, specific plan, PD permit, would identify those areas of the site which should be preserved as open space, not necessarily that the entire, while recognizing there should be some development potential for a private property owner. So that was the intent.
The concern I've mentioned is because of the fact that we know the traffic issues are monumental in this particular area. No matter what we do, unless we have some kind of a use there, which not going to generate heavy traffic like residential will, then it's possible to leave some kind of a wording where it's just not the open space, but some other type of development is allowed. Because if you're going to allow the residential element, then we have to go through the whole exercise of that. And I don't feel very comfortable, but maybe the other commissioners may have different ideas.
Yeah, I'd encourage you just to kind of look at the language on page 26.
Okay.
It's pretty much the pre-existing language for the most part, and whether or not you think that's adequate or if there's some modifications you want to make to that, aside from the residential issue. But again, we didn't propose any substantive changes to the overall body of the 94
Right.
plan in regard to that.
Mayor?
Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, we discussed this a long time ago relative to looking at where houses should be, and I think it was unanimous on the Planning Commission 5 years ago. This was not a suitable site for housing, but the zoning of the land as it is, we're not planning on changing that, just saying we're going to leave it as is or take out any potential for future housing on that.
So the land uses would remain, and it's listed here. It'd be retained as PD, SCRO, so planned development, sub-regional commercial retail office. The mixed-use portion was really a little bit more nebulous, if you will. It was consider mixed use. So it was as an outlier, if I could characterize it that way. So I don't see this as really a change of the basic underlying uses that would be allowed.
And just to clarify, the zoning on that property doesn't really identify any permitted or conditionally permitted uses at all. Defers to a specific plan as being the tool. So we're talking about just the general plan language being modified.
So how about we remove the residential part of that, because the commission, as Commissioner Cunningham mentioned 5 years ago, several years ago, that we all agreed that that site is not suitable for residential.
That's kind of why we brought it up again tonight at the workshop. So if there's some commission direction, we can move forward with the public hearing next time that reflects the commission's desires.
I have one point of clarification I'd like to ask. That pipeline that's running through the properties, is that a gas pipeline? Or what kind of a pipeline?
My recollection is that it's water.
The water pipeline.
Well, what's your commission's opinion on removing the residential part of that? Anyone has any further thoughts on that, so that we can direct the staff what to do?
Well, I haven't read the report from 5 years ago about what areas were considered to be suitable for housing. I was wondering what the reasons were.
Well, we looked at all the areas relative to what was required by the state for us to identify, not to build, to identify potential building sites. And we looked at Levinson property. We looked at all the areas on Bayshore. We looked at Sierra Point. We looked at BWR, whatever it is now.
BWR site also.
Yeah, we looked at all of these places, and over a long period of time, I think we discussed all of this stuff, and the pros and cons, and I think some of the things that were dear to my heart were not creating any more isolated building residential areas. Trying, if we're going to have residential, as make us a community, not have these satellite communities. I think that was part of the discussion.
Yes.
Obviously, the issues relative to potential toxins or on VWR, the potential toxins at the Levinson property, and that would also be a satellite place. I'm just trying to recall the things we were. Jump in anytime, Jamil. And so I think, we really kind of looked at what makes the most sense given the parameters under which we were required to, make this determination. And I think we all worked really hard to make it as few as possible, as pleasant as possible if we have to build them. And building in these isolated places was not in any way, shape, or form anything that appealed to
It
anybody.
was one of the prime consideration.
Yeah,
We didn't
and the
want-
Levinson property, as it is as such, I mean, it could well be built on doing something different at some point in the future, but at this point, it's still, this green property that we get to drive by.
I would just add one other item too, is that as part of that consideration, the state obligates us to zone at certain densities. And so, again, if the city had wanted to move forward with Levinson, it would have had to have been designated at 20 to the acre or more.
Yeah.
And again, there were some issues people had with the terrain and the natural topography, and could that kind of development be at that density be suitably accommodated on that site? That would be the only thing I have to add.
Right, and again, they're even further walking distance to town, and, trying to tie everybody together was,
Right.
I think, is
That was the
correct,
prime
Joe?
reason, yeah.
Part
one
of that
the, One of the
whole-
reasons.
Yeah.
for-
So, I'd be happy to take it out. Residential.
When is the next time that we're likely to look at the issue of areas that are suitable for housing? How often does that come up?
Housing element will need to be adopted, redone in 2022, I believe. So the
Ways
city will
off.
probably start in a blink of an eye. By 2020, I suspect that activity will start again.
But don't we have to submit the housing element almost every year?
No, it's an 8-year, 7 years, I
cycle, but I
guess.
think couple of years ago we submitted the housing element where we committed to have at least 85 homes, and we were not able to do even 30. Do you remember that?
Oh yeah, the numbers tend to vary pretty wildly,
Yeah.
from 400 to 85 to who knows what the next, regional housing needs allocation will be, and we'll get that number from the region, and then we'll have to see what we can do to accommodate that.
So we have to give the numbers, we don't have to
Right.
build the houses.
Right, I
That's right.
understand.
It's an exercise, that's
Yeah.
all. And there is no penalty involved if you don't do it. So, what are your thoughts now before we give any directions to this stuff? Commissioner McCain?
I have a question. When I read about plan development, and it mentions on page 27, it says subareas designated PD may be combined with other land use designations and/or site-specific uses may be included in this plan to guide development of implementing zoning district regulations. So we already have designated the Guadalupe Hills area as tentatively PD SCRO. Would it be bad form to include open space with that? You would have 3 designations. And why? Commissioner Monier, you brought up the fact that there could be grants secured potentially to purchase open space. If we put that designation in, it just opens the potential that perhaps portions of it could be purchased. And since
Yeah, I
it says
guess I would direct you to, on page 27, right above, what the definition, general plan designation of open space is. Properties have been purchased, given, or offered for dedication to a public agency for open space or conservation purposes. So I don't know that the private property on Levinson Peking would qualify for fundamentally meet the test of property that's been either offered or is in public ownership at this. If there were development to happen and part of that did involve dedication of public park or open space, then it would be appropriate to change the designation after the fact. But I don't.
But what happens if we get the funding for that from some agency, for example?
Then you would, again, after the fact, if the city were to, or an agency, conservation agency were to acquire it, then you would go ahead and change that designation to reflect that issue.
But why can't we keep it open now so that it can allow those kind of donations or?
I'm just saying it doesn't really, if you read what the general plan designation says, putting private property into that designation is not really consistent with the current general plan language for what open space is. That's all I'm saying. It's not consistent, I might read.
But the general plan also has a difficulty identifying open space versus open areas and all of those things. So shouldn't we be looking at those at some point to clarify what exactly we mean by that? Because those definitions are pretty old too, you know.
If that's something you want to recommend to the council as sort of a side issue, because I suspect we're getting into legal issues again in terms of condemnation of land and diminution of value by designating property open space. So I'd be very hesitant that you do that. If you want to recommend that the council take that under advisement and ask for some legal, advice on that or something that.
But we're not saying that's always only. We can say it's one of the options in that.
I guess I don't see that it fits the first sentence of the open space test that's set forth in the general plan. That's all I'm saying.
If I may, through the chair, also point you to page 42. This is table 5. And the 94 general plan had already included for the Northwest Bayshore a minimum of 25% in open space. That's the far right column, which now is labeled Guadalupe Hills. And I added the words per specific plan, but the 25% as a minimum would stay there. And really it is per specific plan, so there would have to be, consistent with the HCP, there would be a biological study that would be done to look at what is the habitat out there and what areas do we want to actually map out to have open space, and I would see it as similar to the Northeast Ridge, where they mapped out the development areas as residential, and that's on the screen right now, and then those areas to remain as open space were mapped out as open space, and it was through that permit process that was done. So that minimum would remain there as 25%.
Okay, go ahead.
If I might add, just from what you just explained to us, one other consideration, and for the chair as well, minimum of 25 may cover us, because a property owner may choose to say, we'll designate more open space, which we will offer to the city. So we're not eliminating that potential for more than 25. So perhaps a triple designation there is unnecessary, because just that key word is minimum.
Right.
So I appreciate that explanation.
Yeah.
And I think, as Ken pointed out, a biological study may indicate that more of the site than 25% needs to be conserved as mitigation for any development. So, again, you're right. The 25 is not a ceiling; it's a floor.
It's a minimum required.
And kind of as an aside off of that, I mentioned in Table 5, I have it listed as per specific plan. If you chose to go with a plan development without a specific plan, we would change that to be per plan development, 25% minimum. So either way, we could capture that. So that's the other topic that we want to discuss tonight.
Okay, so again, we're back to the issue of the residential element. What are your thoughts on the two commissioners? I'm waiting to hear from both of you as to you like to keep it in or you want to remove it.
Well, my thought is that even if we did keep it in, it would be a considerable effort to answer the question of density, since there are questions of habitat
Yeah.
and so on. So it seemed like even in the retention scenario, it would make the most sense to defer any such discussions until the next time we do the housing element in 3 or 4 years. And under those circumstances, since the last time it was discussed, the area was not considered a site for housing, I imagine that it wouldn't do any harm to take it out and reconsider next time around. Just when we do the housing element, we look at everything fresh, right, and
Yeah.
pick up what we did last time and review it all again.
Yeah, I'm of the opinion that we should take it out at this point, and whenever the next cycle comes in, at that point we can think about the residential element again. At this point,
Seems
Well,
suitable to me.
things change, but I
Yeah.
agree with you. I mean, we discussed this for a long time, that it wasn't a suitable place for housing, for a
Commissioner
lot of reasons.
McCain?
I'm not in complete disagreement with what my fellow commissioners are saying. I'm hearkening back to one of the more recent meetings we had. We had a real estate agent, property manager came in, talked to us about potential trade-offs in property in exchange for housing. And I'm not convinced completely. However, I'm just wondering whether that should potentially be a consideration for funding open space. And if we remove it, then it's removed until the next RENA number evaluation in 2022. And that's a long time away. So if we in fact remove residential, we're negating that possibility.
That was the point made by the Millers. Mr. Ray Miller and Anya Miller made that point that maybe that will be possibly we can get the funding for that. But at the same time, if we do agree with the residential and go that route, then it eliminates any possibility of applying for any kind of funding from the conservation agencies, because we are designating that as they can build, and possibly we can get the money for the open space from the developer.
Are you certain that it negates any kind of public funding?
That's what my understanding is.
I'm not
I
sure
don't
that's
know.
true, because if you in fact approached a property owner with some public funding and said, we'd like to purchase part of this, and if it's as part of the materials we were given to read talks about terrain and suitability, there are a lot of areas there you would never be able to put streets and infrastructure in. So those are prime for open space, which might be funded by potentially an owner saying, well, I'd like to do this and I would give you some funding, and still seeking some public funding. So I'm not completely against taking out the residential, but I think just to be wise, we ought to think that through before we make that decision, because otherwise it's till 2022.
But the thing is open space is the kind of open space we're looking for is the prime corridor for the species. And I don't know which in this particular zone where that is exactly, and it's possible that he wants to give some portion of that, but it may not be the right one,
Right. But as Mr. Swiecki pointed out, some of that in environmental review might come up automatically designated as habitat, where there's no way you could build on it.
Mm-hmm.
Is that correct?
That's correct. And to the funding question, I think there's a lot of different streams of funding that might have different implications. For example, this entire area, all of the Levinson parcel and probably other pieces out there, fall within the priority conservation area identified by ABAG, for example. So if there's funding that's tied to the PCA, whether or not it's designated for some other purpose or not, it's lies within the PCA, it would be available for that pot of funding. There may be other funding sources that are limited because of its general plan designation. But then again, as Commissioner Mackin pointed out, things like the city's funding opportunities or other grant funds might not be restricted or hampered based on a land use designation. They'd be tied more to value, habitat value, and that's what you score points in terms of grant eligibility, not necessarily what a land is designated for, but what its true habitat qualities and value is.
Yeah.
Right hand. What if?
Local entertainment.
In any event, my other concern regarding the residential development is also the traffic and the impact on the the bay shore and all of that. So that's one of the reasons that I think that at this point I don't want to include the residential in that particular part. When it comes back, at that time we will see. At this point, we don't have any proposal for building or anything.
But may I ask you a question?
Sure.
Just to think this through. If in fact you're concerned about traffic, if it's SCRO, even if you remove the residential, you could still have manufacturing and offices there. That's also going to be traffic.
Yeah, but it's not as severe impact as the residential will be.
Well, but the residential, depending on how you designate the density.
Yeah, but that's a whole new issue that we have to address when
Right.
we decide.
Well, one of the
Residential
proposals that was given to us on page 2 is just to retain the language. The issue of allowable density be revisited when the land use element of the general plan's comprehensively updated or when the housing element is updated, whichever comes first.
Anyhow, I'm of the opinion that we should remove it, but the others, let's see how many of us would like to remove the residential part from there. So, Mr. Anderson,
I would prefer to retain it.
so we have 2 and 2.
We do. Stalemate.
What should we do now?
Well, any action the commission would want to take to amend something would require an affirmative vote, affirmative majority vote. So in the event of a proposal, like if staff were to propose or that change, if the change is not approved, the language, the change is denied and the current language stays in effect if it came down to that situation. So the language would be retained.
Unfortunately, we don't have 5th commissioners to break the tie. So I guess it's 2 and 2.
Well, we'll go. I mean, this is only a workshop,
discussion.
and so
Yeah.
based on the direction we have, we will bring it back probably without the change. Obviously, at the time it's at another public hearing, the commission will take a formal vote, and whether that ends up being the same or not is something we'll see at a formal public hearing.
Okay, so let's do that then. So this particular item will be revisited at some point in future, in a month or so, whenever you are ready. Is that agreeable to everyone?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The next one is items initiated by the staff, proposal to initiate revisions to Planning Commission procedures to align with the current practice. You mean we are not doing that according to the current practice all these years?
Hold on.
Through the
Not
chair,
done.
I think there might be some other items to discuss on
On that
on
particular-
Northwest Bayshore still.
Okay, go ahead.
That would be if the commission is satisfied with the language that as it now appears in the general plan amendment text that essentially would retain both the PD and the specific plan.
Yes.
Yes.
If that's the direction you want to go, we'll keep it that way. If you wanted to discuss it further,
No, I think I have no problem with keeping it that way, but I don't know the others. Do you have any Any questions, any concerns, keeping it the way it is, or
I'd still prefer to keep both.
so keep both PD and I
Yes.
think that's what was proposed at the last meeting when I was here, wasn't it?
That is correct. We just wanted to circle back around and confirm that. So that's why the text is as it's shown here.
I think we all agree to that, right? I mean,
We did.
all of us in agreement.
Mhm.
So does that answer your question?
That does.
Okay.
Yep, we need to vote to accept.
No, this is a discussion.
Any other things on that item, or we've done with it?
I
Nothing for us, but I mean, like you had the question about the referendum, and I assume the city attorney's letter answered whatever questions you have about referendum and procedure for or initiative. So,
You know what I like to suggest is maybe one of these days you can have the city attorney come here, address to the planning commission some of these complicated issues that we do need some clarification, because we all has a little confusion between the specific plan and plan development and all of those things. And also now I'm looking at this other item on the agenda saying that they adhere to the current practice. What does that mean? That all these years we were not doing according to the current practice, or what?
so we're ready to move on to that other item?
No, I mean it's all tied to that the need for the
Oh, yeah, certainly.
attorney to come and address
yeah.
us.
I would suggest what we would do is compile a list of, through the individual commissioners, issues that you would like the city attorney to be prepared to address or discuss. It'd be much more effective use of everybody's time if he has an understanding of what kind of issues, so he can be
Yeah.
prepared appropriately.
So,
May I?
go ahead.
Relative to that, I was actually going to bring it up under items initiated by the Planning Commission, but since there seems to be some confusion overall with the committees and the commissions, not just the Planning Commission, a lot of new people, I was going to ask if we could either have a half-hour session with all of the committees and commissions, with the City Council and the City Attorney prior to maybe a City Council meeting to go through some of these things, because there does seem to me to be some things that are kind of way off and left base sometimes, and it'd be really nice if we could bring it all together.
What I would suggest then, we can formally agendize that as a request, and then if the commission as a body decides to make that request to the council, can do so, and we'd prepare a draft letter based on the discussion for the chair's signature and do it that.
Yeah, that's fine, but I also want
A separate session with the city
session for
attorney.
the planning, because we deal with a lot of other things that other
Sure.
committees deal with.
Yeah.
And we always come across the issues like specific plans, plan
Mm-hmm.
development, and permit issues and all of that. As
Yeah, we'll follow up with like an email reminder, and then request that you respond via email to staff about issues you'd like to see, and work with the city attorney with his schedule and when we could arrange something. It'd probably be later. May not be until the fall. I could see that may not be until the fall, but yeah, we could do that.
Thanks.
Okay.
Yeah, both of those sound like great ideas. In particular, I'd prefer to prioritize Commissioner Cunningham's suggestion. It sounds like a great idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a discombobulation and some. I've been watching the Planning Commission meetings, even though I haven't been here, and I'm watching some of the other meetings, and it's like, how did we get here? How is this okay? How why are certain people allowed to do this? And it's not what I have seen as being appropriate in the past. So I would really like to lock that down.
Yeah, there's a lot of inconsistency if you
Yeah.
see that. So I think that will be, you guys think it's a good idea?
Yeah,
So-
and Colleen, you haven't even had an opportunity to go to a planning thing this year because it was sold out, right? And that was super valuable. I mean, I think it's an awesome thing to do. And next time it's in the Bay Area, I hope we can all go together. 'Cause
Yeah.
I think that would be
I
really
think
valuable.
it's a good idea to revisit every now and then.
Yep.
Because a lot of new issues come up and a lot of new policies. And nowadays, everybody is into housing. So I think that will be good for us to
Well-
hear what the other cities are thinking about.
Well, sure, and there's a lot of input from people within our community who think they know the right answers and are giving,
Yeah.
their opinions on how things should be that I think are completely incorrect at times. So I think it would be great to have us all on the same page
Right.
about what's right, what is the right protocol, what's appropriate, what's not inappropriate, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, sounds like a good idea. So you can prepare something for maybe in the next meeting we can bring it in. Okay. Anything else on that one? That subject?
No.
Nothing? Okay. This item initiated by staff regarding the proposal to initiate revisions to Planning Commission procedure to align with current practice. That almost sounds like we are not following the current practice.
Or I'd say sometimes that what was considered appropriate practice in 2002 may not be. I have to admit I haven't used the, what do they say I should be doing something by telegram, for
Yeah, I've
example.
never
I
received my telegram.
I haven't been using the telegram, so I'm violating the procedures myself, so I'd like to
How do we get
absolve myself of such a terrible thing. So, there's some things that probably have been carried forward a number of years that we might just want to look at sort of while the opportunity's there.
So you want us to comment on this, or is that the?
Well, all I did, we put this on so you're aware that we are initiating it. And again, Commissioner Anderson had some very specific questions, and we would bring it back in a draft form. And if people have other comments, questions, or concerns about what we might change, this was just basically that we're initiating this, and whatever feedback you want to provide to us, either tonight or another time before it comes. Again, this will probably be on maybe in another 2 months, it'll be back to you because I'd like to look at the Brown Act, because I'm not sure that everything in here is fully consistent with other requirements of state law, like the Brown Act, and again, revisit this with the city attorney to make sure our procedures are actually quite legally sound. That's my primary goal here.
Are the comments from the Commissioner Anderson's available, or are you?
Oh, I sent it to staff.
You send it to
It's here.
Is it here? I mean,
Oh, my
I don't-
question to the attorney is here, but I don't think that they included.
Yeah, and I don't recall that we did, but Greg, you can either mention them now or we can just fold them.
But
in.
I don't remember exactly what my questions were. But when I
Is that the
sent
email?
I sent 2 emails. One is there. The other is not here because
Oh.
I said to staff that I simply
this was
wanted
the
them to answer the questions when they presented their
Yeah, it
the
wasn't-
updated draft.
Yeah, we weren't
Or when
planning
we
on
discussed it.
having you adopt anything this evening, so it was just more feedback for us and probably things we may end up having to research. I think the thing about emergency meetings and what the threshold or the criteria when somebody could actually call for an emergency meeting, I think was one of the questions, and that gets into the Brown Act, for example. So we just need to do a little research.
Emergency meetings.
Emergency.
What was the question about emergency meetings?
There's
Did
a
you read the
provision-
memorandum?
There's a provision in the current rules that
Oh,
that
You can,
speaks to, you have to notice a meeting 72 hours in advance unless there's a special meeting or emergency meeting called, and then it's 24 hours, and there's, we just make sure we're all consistent with the Brown Act requirements.
so
Yeah,
these
I was
are from
wondering
the
why
Brown
we would
Act
have one.
requirements? All of these?
No, these are our current rules. And
Yeah, so they are based on what criteria? I mean,
I
who
couldn't,
did that? City Council?
I would suspect they've been in place and modified in various forms since the city's been a city, and you've had a planning commission, so probably from the 60s, hence the telegraph or whatever telegram reference.
That's when we need to get our telegram if we're going to have a short notice meeting.
sure.
So can we make it more simplified and straightforward rather than all these requirements one after the other?
Yeah, and certainly if you have specific questions or issues or language that you just don't understand or think is appropriate, that's the kind of feedback would be very valuable for us. Because, I mean, it's 2 things. One, it's obviously it provides kind of a legal foundation for how you do business, but it is to help the commissioners and the chairman do your job. So the idea, if it's a document that is bound in legalese and doesn't really help you do your job. I'd like to balance that out. I mean, provide the basic legal framework, but provide it in a way that actually does help you perform your task. So, your input is really important in how we might want to.
Yeah. One of the things I was looking at here, the responsibilities of the Planning Commission chair, the assist staff in determining agenda items, and I had a long discussion with previous planning director. He was strongly opposed to that idea. He thought that agenda items can only be generated by the planning director. So I'm glad that it's here. And what I like to do is I want to add to this is any of the commissioners can submit what they like to see in the agenda. So feel free to submit to me, and then I can give it to the staff. Any items that you would like to discuss, And what I have done is in the next meeting I will bring the number of issues that are still we have not touched upon or has been sitting there for a long time. And what I was proposing, and I will distribute the copies to all of you, is to maybe whenever we have a short agenda, or we don't have a meeting at that point, we can pick some of the items from that list and work on it, because a lot of things are not done for a long time. And that also include any of the items that any of the planning commissioners like to bring it up. And the procedure that I like to see, and I like to get your advice also, as to whosoever comes up with the idea what we need to discuss, I think that commissioner should be given an opportunity to present that, and then we can look at what the staff's opinion on that, and then the rest of the commissioners jump in and make comments on that. That way the commissioners initiating that particular suggestions or recommendations have the opportunity to discuss what are the reasons why you want to discuss that and all of that. And then the staff can also see from their point of view as to whether this item is worth discussing and what can be changed or whatever can be done. So my invitation to all of you, any of you like to see some items on the agenda, please feel free to send it to me, which includes myself also. If I think something that I want to discuss, I will share that with all of you. So next meeting, I will bring that list, and then we can see how the staff. I'll give the opportunity to the staff to look at it and see how we can agendize those things.
Sure. I think we want to make sure we all understand the wording and responsibilities of the chair are to assist staff in determining agenda items. So we try to make sure we're all on board.
Yes.
I don't want to be in a position where my perspective now, and this is not that the commission can unilaterally add items to the agenda, and it has to be worked through the department, work through what your obligations are and your responsibilities given to you by the city council. So, very carefully that language says assist staff in determining agenda items. So I'll make sure we're all really clear on the word.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's why I just mentioned that we will get the feedback from all the planning commissioners, and then I'll sit down with the staff and discuss and see what we can do, those agenda items. And I think the commissioners should be given the opportunity to say why they want to bring this up and what are the concerns and all that, so that we all have the, some kind of ways to bring some things that bothers us, or maybe we want to discuss further on that. So I think this will be a good chance for all of us to participate in this kind of discussions. And any commissioners who disagree with the other commissioners, that's okay. That's why we are here. We all can discuss, and based on that, we'll determine whether we should discuss further on this or not. Do you guys agree with that approach, or any concerns with that?
I have a concern.
Yes.
My concern relative to this kind of open-ended, let's have all the commissioners have an ability to bring up whatever they want, is that I don't think it is appropriate for a commissioner to say, here's my idea, I'm going to go tell staff, this is my idea, and then we're going to use staff time to research something that could take a long time, and then be using staff time for our ideas. That bothers me a lot.
I think that's
No,
specifically prohibited.
I didn't mean that way, that you go directly, the commissioner staff is going to go directly, commission directly go into the staff and
No, I
start
understand it
asking them.
through you. I
What I'm
understand
saying
that.
through me, and then I will bring it here and discuss also before we
Before we
assign
take
any
it.
time to review that.
Right. So
You know,
I,
because,
that's a
staff
much
time
better
is important
protocol.
too, right?
Absolutely. Because I don't think we.
No, I was not going to bypass any of
Okay.
this without checking with the rest of the commissioners.
Because I don't think the commissioners should be telling staff to, here, go research this and bring me your report so I can bring it up. I think that's completely inappropriate. So.
But at
it's
the
going
same
to-
time, if all the commissioners agree that this matter is to be researched further, and we can spend the staff time to do that, then
I don't think
it's
that
more
the
appropriate.
commission can direct staff. I think only the council.
We're not directing the staff, but there are planning issues that we think they need some help in terms of.
Well, yes, we're talking about two separate things here. We're talking about what you're talking about right now is having a discussion, and then we're also talking about staff doing research. I don't
In
think we
case,
can ask to do research.
in case if we
Right.
there is a discussion item, and if it needs further research, for example, we have a question of that particular item, then the staff has to do some research to give us an answer, to
Maybe staff
make
can
it-
clarify, but I thought council had to approve.
I think there are a couple things going on here. One is certainly through the vehicle of items initiated by the commission today, right? On your agenda, a commissioner can bring something up. If you get multiple commissioners who agree, yeah, we should agendize that, and we've had that to degrees of varying success or maybe not success, but that gives that person the opportunity. And really, it's going to depend on what is the item and what is the outcome in terms of whether or not this is something that staff in our administrative capacity of supporting you in your function is something we can do, or if it's something to say, that is a broader policy issue and a more intensive effort, that would be the kind of thing you would recommend the council that some work program
Yeah.
be initiated. So, I mean, there's, I don't think I can say a hard and fast line of when that would be, but I think as those items were, if they were to come up, staff would certainly advise you as our opinion as to this is something that is sort of incidental to what we do and supporting you, and we can do that without too much effort, or you're asking for something that is a work program that is really not supported by the council or has we've been directed to do by the council.
It really depends on the item that
Exactly.
for the discussion. And the items that I'm trying to bring it up in the next meeting are the one that open items that were, like some of the things that we need the revision for the general plan that has been put on the back burner. So let's bring it and see if we can finish that part. So those kind of items that are still not completed.
I
My
can tell you the general plan update is really something the council's had input on in terms of when it's going to proceed, and their direction is it will proceed after the Baylands is complete.
That's understood, but there are some items that the Planning Commission already agreed to, voted on that, and we were waiting for the certain languages to be put in so that we can bring that before the council.
Yeah, certainly any examples you have
Yeah.
or
I will show you the list,
Great,
and then we can go from there. And I think I will pass the list on to the rest of the commissioners also, so they get their opinion also.
I think that,
This is a democratic process.
well, those discussions with the city attorney and then maybe with the city council, I think will iron this out.
Some of this.
Because I think some of this stuff is sort of nebulous and all over the place
Yeah.
right now.
So once you see my list, maybe you will have the opportunity to see whether this is right or not, or it's, I will not be hurt if you say, throw this away.
Promise? Kidding.
we call that file 13, right?
13, no.
So no problem with
Thank
that. So next meeting, I'll try to bring that. Yes, Commissioner.
Mr. Chair, before we depart on the rules of procedure, just one thing I thought of that doesn't seem to be in here, and I don't know if it has a place in the Planning Commission, but I know during the Baylands hearings, there were some commissioners working as subcommittees. There's no reference to subcommittees. So maybe that's something you want to consider including with a definition. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a
Good
good
idea.
point. Actually, we have commissioners working on several different committees at one point. I
Yeah.
think you were in one of them, and I think
Several.
several.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think there are two different things. One is if the council directs a subcommittee and commissioners serve at the pleasure of the council. I think Commissioner Mackin's probably getting at the commission choosing to create its own subcommittee for whatever those criteria or term or whatever it is. So we'll look into that.
Yes.
And sometimes we have the representation at the Park and Rec Commission, something going on their committee, and like the classic example was a sustainability discussion. There was, I think Commissioner Reinhardt was appointed to that. So those kind of things you're talking about. Okay. Anything else from the staff?
Oh, I did find my questions. If your curiosity is burning too much, I can read them, or you can just wait
No, go
until
ahead. Go ahead.
you want to hear them.
I can would like to hear.
I want to hear them too.
All right. I'll tell both of you then, and you as well.
Thank you.
Question number 1, 24-hour notice is required for special meetings in Section A2, but Section C4 requires a 72-hour notice for regular meetings. So I wanted to know what circumstances justify a special meeting, or what, more clarity over that. 'Cause I don't think we've ever done a 24-hour notice before.
No.
Section 4.2a says that the acting chair may debate and exercise all of the rights and privileges of commissioners set forth in the document. And it was my understanding that in practice, the chair always tended to go last.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to know if that was part of the rules or just a tradition. I just wanted more clarification around that area. It seemed like a good practice to me, and maybe we should codify it. And Section C5 says a commissioner may request an amendment of the agenda at the beginning of a meeting to add information and add an information item which will not require action by the Planning Commission. And I'm wondering what's the definition of an action. We've always had items initiated by the Commission at the end, but we've never done this. So
That would be, again, one of those items that perhaps we need to look at the Brown Act requirements, because I'm not convinced that we can just, at the meeting, add items at anybody's discretion, staff's discretion, other than what we do kind of in that catch-all of commission
Right.
items. So I think
And we
that's
haven't
one of
done
those
that
ideas.
before, so
Are
I-
these rules actually compliant with other laws that are on the books?
Yep. So those were just the areas I wanted clarification on.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. The items initiated by the
Well,
commission.
I'm sorry, I do have two things. One is I've been requested, Julia will be following up with an email about summer schedules in terms of availability, our regular meetings, and are we going to have people enough, especially with a limited group here, will we have a quorum for all our scheduled meetings? And then we're also looking potentially at the potential need for a special meeting either July 18th or 19th, and Julia, again, will follow up with an email. That may or may not have to be done, but she wants to check availability, so she'll be following up with that. So I just
A
want
special meeting for what?
18th or 19th, you said?
it may be related to Parkside, the Parkside project. That would be the point. There's some question about availability of consultants and other individuals who,
June 18th or 19th?
July.
July, sorry.
So the Parkside project is finally coming before the.
It
planning
will be
commission?
soon, yes.
Okay, what was the council action on that? Are they still going forward with that, or?
Oh, they're still going forward. They provided some direction as to what the concept that they wanted to see as the basis for the plan. And so the consultants have taken that direction as the basis for the plan that you will see and will be hopefully out in the next 10 days or so.
So would we have the opportunity to change the basis for that plan, come up with a new plan? Or we
You
have
can
to
make whatever recommendations
Yeah, to
you're
stick with
inclined to make to the council. That's your
Because normally it comes
prerogative.
before the planning commission first and then goes to the council. This is kind of an opposite, you know.
Yeah,
and
certainly
I'm
you,
kind of-
you retain the right to make whatever recommendations you like to the council, though. That's certainly not, you're not
Okay.
prohibited or precluded from doing that.
Okay. Anything else, stuff?
No, that's it.
So should I move on to the next item then? Okay. Items initiated.
That they're ready. They clearly know.
That person second, what I was going to say.
Right.
Anything from the commission? Anybody wants to say anything or
I
discuss?
kind of added what I was going to
Yeah.
say before, so I don't need to say that again.
Okay. Any schedule for the filling the planning commission vacancy? I haven't seen anything on the notice board or anything like that.
Yeah, June.
I understand it was run through the end of June, right?
June is when the applications are
Or
due.
due, and then the council's schedule is a little off, so I suspect the very earliest, I would expect you'll be running a little shorthanded until late summer. That's my gut reaction at the earliest.
So they're not going to go back to the old list and
No, they opened a new recruitment.
new recruitment. Okay. Anybody knows the ex-commissioner, the reasons for her sudden retirement?
I think that's her personal choice.
It's personal choice, but I mean.
I don't know more than what she indicated.
Okay. So are we going to have the little get together for her?
Sure, we'll do that at some point. Yeah, no,
I
that's
guess we
that's a
should
good
get used
idea.
to it, no?
Very,
I mean,
yeah,
she did serve on the commission
Oh, absolutely,
for
yes.
quite a few years, you know.
That's a
So
a very good idea.
Her
We'll
efforts should be
schedule something.
recognized,
work
just
with
like
that.
we did for the Caroline and
Sure.
Reinhardt. So
Okay.
maybe in next meeting or meeting after, when we have to check with her too, see. Okay. Anything else?
Yeah, I have one thing. I don't want to discuss schedule tonight, but I just wanted to throw it out there and ask, is Thursday carved in stone for everyone? Or could we at a future time consider moving the night of this meeting? I know there's a large amount of inertia involved.
Well, the reason for, as I recall, Thursday's meeting was that the other times the place was booked for the council meetings and all of that stuff, and I think Wednesday staff stays late until 8 o'clock or something, right? So this was the most appropriate time for the planning commission's meeting, but I'm open to it. I don't have any problem changing it.
Yeah, we can look at, again, I don't know if it's established by resolution or ordinance or
No,
what
I
exactly
don't think
actually
so, no.
established it and what the process would be. And obviously, we'd want to poll the commissioners as to, is there a better day that's, in general, a day that's better for all, collectively, the group. People have signed on here for Thursday night meetings, and I think it would be difficult to change that, the rules for people who made a certain commitment for a term of time, but we can look into that.
Not if it's inconvenient.
No, I mean, I have no problem with that, but
Tuesday's the only other night I'm available, ever.
I'm okay with Tuesdays as well.
yeah, Tuesday will be good time also, and a good day also.
Yeah, I have no other days available, ever.
No,
I'm not doing it Friday night.
no.
Well, let's do it every Saturday
Every
morning.
Friday night.
Sunday afternoon, I don't
Maybe not.
Okay, if there is nothing else.
look into that. It's actually in your rules too, your rules of procedure you'll be looking at. So if that's, we can talk about that some more, and we'll look into that.
It's been on Thursdays forever, as far as I remember.
It is, yeah.
Last
Although the
time
council
we-
moved from
Monday.
Mondays to Thursdays, 2 years ago, 4 years ago?
Well, they moved from Monday because of all the public holidays, right?
It could have been, yeah.
Yeah.
And
Seems like it's been more than 2 to 4 years that it's been on Thursday.
No, it's been for a long time.
time flies. Okay,
Yeah.
you're a long time.
I don't know.
Okay, if anything else by the commission? If not, then I'm looking for a make a motion to,
I make a motion that we adjourn tonight's meeting until the next regular meeting of June 8th, 2017.
I'll second
in
that.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.